Hi friends, welcome back to the Friendship Center. My name's Eric and I'm the education coordinator here. In case you forgot, the Friendship Center is a nonprofit, community-based advocacy organization that offers services to folks who have been impacted by domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking. If you'd like to learn more about the Friendship Center, please visit our website at www.thefriendshipcenter.org. We'll talk today about risk factors in relationships where domestic violence is present. These risk factors we'll talk about today should be thought of as warning signs for victims of domestic violence. The risk factors we'll cover in today's video have been statistically shown to indicate when a domestic violence victim is at severe risk for harm or death at the hands of their abuser. For victims and survivors of domestic violence who may be watching this video, I hope that if you have experienced any of these behaviors or situations that we talk about today, you will consider the impact that these things are having on you or have had on you in the past, and if there's anything that you can do in your current situation to try to make yourself or maybe your family more safe. For those of you watching this who may have a loved one or a friend trapped in an abusive relationship currently, I hope that you will learn some things from this video that will encourage you to share your concern with that victim or survivor and help them to find the resources that they may need to find safety. The risk factors we'll discuss today are primarily known to us as risk factors thanks to the research by Dr. Jacquelyn Campbell, Dr. Carolyn Snider, and Dr. Jill Messing. We're aware of all of these risk factors because some very passionate people have taken the time to conduct assessments of intimate partner homicides and to interview survivors of domestic violence. Cases of completed intimate partner homicide and the stories of domestic violence survivors inform us about what behaviors to look for in relationships that might tell us as supporters what to look for to help our friends and loved ones be safe. Some of the risk factors we'll talk about today are fairly simple for us to understand. We can wrap our minds pretty easily around why some of these things may clearly indicate that a victim of domestic violence is at serious risk for severe harm or death. These more easy to understand risk factors include such things as an increase in violence recently, or an increase in the frequency of violence occurring in a relationship. This might mean that in the past 6 months, there has been an increase in physical violence, such as pushing, hitting, kicking, biting, and use of weapons. We can clearly understand that a person is in serious danger if their abusive partner has ever threatened to kill them or tried to kill them previously. We can also easily understand how someone might be in danger if an abusive partner has pointed a weapon at them or threatened them with a weapon. There's some hard data to back up these next handful of risk factors that I'd like to talk through with you. Let's start with strangulation. Strangulation is defined in Montana as anything that someone does to another person that would cause that victim to lose airflow or blood flow. These could include things like putting any pressure on their neck or their chest, or covering their mouth or nose. Strangulation is a very important risk factor to recognize because we know based on data that we've collected over years that victims of strangulation are 700% more likely to be murdered by the abusive partner who strangled them. We also know that victims of strangulation are far more likely to have long-term health consequences than someone who's not been strangled before. Gun ownership in the context of an abusive relationship is also a huge risk indicator for victims of domestic violence. Data collected over the past 25 or 30 years tells us that in an abusive relationship where partners are cohabitating, if there is a gun present in the home, no matter who owns the gun, that victim of domestic violence is 5 times more likely to be murdered by their abusive partner. It may not surprise you to learn that there's a significant overlap between homicide and suicide when we discuss domestic violence. The Montana Domestic Violence Fatality Review Commission, which is a team of experts that travel around the state of Montana and investigate cases of domestic violence related murders, has pointed out in recent reports that depression and suicidal ideation are significant factors in most of the intimate partner homicide cases that they've reviewed recently. We also know, thank you to the organization Everytown for Gun Safety, that suicidal ideation and depressive symptoms have been reported by survivors of domestic violence homicide attempts, as well as by talking to family members of victims of domestic violence related homicides. When victims of domestic violence and attempted domestic violence related homicides have been interviewed, many of those victims have reported that their abusive partner has contemplated or attempted suicide previously in their lifetime. One of the key risk indicators that advocates such as those at the Friendship Center are always looking for is any mention of a separation between the victim of domestic violence and the perpetrator. We know that in the United States, the vast majority of female domestic violence homicide victims have recently separated from their abuser before they were murdered. Data suggests that most victims of domestic violence related homicide left their abusive partner within a year prior to being murdered. When we contemplate why so many recently separated victims may have been murdered by their abusive partners, we can talk about the dynamics of power and control in abusive relationships. And we can reflect on how abusers commit these acts of violence in order to feel powerful. And when they lose that ability to inflict harm on their partner, they start to feel like they are losing control. Physical violence during pregnancy is also a significant risk indicator. Data tells us that homicide is the leading cause of death for pregnant women in the United States. Men who abuse their female victims while those victims are pregnant seem to be particularly likely to commit homicide. It's important to point out the prevalence of substance abuse in severe incidents of domestic violence and in intimate partner homicide cases. It's important also to recognize that substance abuse does not cause domestic violence. Substance abuse simply seems to escalate the severity or frequency of violence in abusive relationships. There are several other risk factors that we as professional advocates look for when we're interacting with victims of domestic violence. These risk factors are less tangible than some others that we've discussed and may be more difficult for us as supporters and loved ones of domestic violence victims to recognize. But statistically, we know that they are present in the majority of intimate partner homicide cases that have been reviewed by experts. If a domestic violence abuser displays constant jealousy or is always trying to control the behavior of the victim in that relationship, these are significant risk indicators that we need to be on the lookout for as those who are trying to help folks trapped in abusive relationships. We also know that unemployment on the part of the abuser or significant financial loss in recent months tends to escalate the severity and frequency of violence experienced by victims as well. Again, these risk factors that I've just covered are a little bit less tangible and maybe more difficult for us as supporters of victims to recognize. But if we hear our loved ones talking about these things going on in their relationship or in their life, those are warning signs to us to take the situation seriously and offer that victim some help and some resources. We could spend far more time discussing individual risk factors that increase the likelihood that a victim of domestic violence will be severely harmed or killed by their abuser. However, what's really important for us to recognize is that there is an opportunity for us as advocates and for friends and family members of victims to pay attention to what's going on in the life of our loved one and to offer them support. These risk factors that I've covered today are backed by data and statistics that have been compiled over the previous decades by experts in their field. If you are a victim of domestic violence or a survivor of domestic violence and you're watching this, please take these risk factors seriously. Think about if these things have ever happened to you, or if you fear that your abusive partner may or will eventually severely harm you or kill you. If you would like to connect with a professional advocate at the Friendship Center who can help you with such things as safety planning and emergency shelter, please feel free to contact us. All of our services are completely free and confidential. If you are the loved one of a domestic violence victim, a family member, a friend, even a coworker or a casual acquaintance, and you are aware of harm that your person is suffering in their relationship, please offer them support and offer to connect them with resources. It's very important to know that if you care about someone who is trapped in an abusive relationship, you need to empower them to make their own decisions. As supporters of domestic violence victims, it's important for us not to tell the person we care about what to do or how they should go about finding safety, but simply offer them support, offer them resources, let them know that you care about them and that you will always be there for them. Instead of saying something like, I think you should report to law enforcement, or I think you should get a restraining order, or I think you should do something else, we might use words instead of, I'm concerned for your safety. I'd like to help you. Is there any way that I can support you? I hope that our discussion today about risk factors has been helpful. Again, these are warning signs that someone in an abusive relationship may suffer from severe physical harm or even death at the hands of their abusive partner. If you have any questions about any of the risk factors that we've discussed today, or if you or someone you know needs to talk to a trained professional advocate, please contact us at the Friendship Center at 406-442-6800. You can also connect with us online at thefriendshipcenter.org. Remember, domestic violence is a very serious concern for many members of our community. If there's something that you can do to support someone in an abusive relationship, please offer them that help. And if you don't know how to offer that help, please consider contacting us. From all of us here at the Friendship Center, I hope this video finds you well and safe. Please take care.